Again, remember, longer term, I trade gold, and just full disclosure, today, my trading position is short gold, but I hold more gold in my drawer, in my safe, than I'm short on the board, right?
Now, what investments are you looking at right now as we're seeing this inflation that just seems to be getting worse and there's no end in sight?
Well, I mean, look, Elijah, I always buy equities. I'm pretty heavily invested in equities, but I do hedge them, right? That's one of the things I do is I've got a model that hedges, and I've got a lot of equities, but I'm protected to it, X percent on the downside. I mean, I think gold's a good play here. Again, remember, longer term, I trade gold, and just full disclosure, today, my trading position is short gold, but I hold more gold in my drawer, in my safe, than I'm short on the board, right? I'm a believer in gold. I'm a big believer in platinum. I think platinum is probably a hell of a play down here, because it's still really, in my mind, underpriced. I could get cheaper, right? But, I think those are the plays. And I think it's time to start taking a good look at the cryptocurrencies as well. Because, look, let's face it, people are getting frustrated with the power that the Fed has and that these governments around the globe have. It is becoming very, very scary. And I think some people are finally waking up to the fact that this manipulation and this fraudulent action by central banks around the globe is not good for the economies anywhere.
It's so interesting because people debate about whether precious metals are manipulated or other markets are manipulated. At the end of the day, regardless of what those interventions in those markets are, what the truth is there, the Fed is intervening in interest rates and controlling the monetary system, which really is manipulation at the end of the day and impacts all these other markets.
Well, 100%. See, the difference between gold and silver, people, listen, I get letters about that all the time. Every time I write something, I get nasty letters about the manipulation. I go, okay, great. Except there's one thing. You have to have price discovery. And if you're going to try to manipulate lower, you got to have buyers. If the buyers didn't step in, the prices would go much lower, wouldn't it? So, but the difference between the Federal Reserve and precious metals is very simple. They can create through the back door, more money for the government, which means that really your dollars are worth a lot less. Precious metals are worth what they're worth, and they're a hard asset based on, what they're worth and what you can sell them for. So again, I understand there's some directives and some things that go on, but as far as major manipulation in precious metals, I'm not an agreeer. I'm not a believer. I think that, again, yes, there is some pressure. They sell a lot of paper, but at the end of the day, Elijah, I don't think there's enough gold in the world or silver in the world to cover the amount of paper that's out on the street right now.
I know we've covered this in previous interviews, but for those who are watching for the first time, if you could explain what that means, because I think that's a pretty interesting statement that there's more paper out there than actual metal to cover it.
Well, yeah. Well, ETFs and options are created, as a derivative to a general market. Okay, so you've got GLD as a gold ETF, GDX. You've got a bunch of ETFs that buy and sell, and they trade. And of course, they have to have equal balance, right? There has to be a buyer for every seller. But I think they put so much paper on the street when they're selling that I think if everybody took their certificates and said, okay, I want to turn this into real gold, I don't think there's enough. I think what we've done is we've oversold. Part of keeping a cap on price or trying to is to continue to sell the paper, because you don't have the physical to sell, so you have to sell the paper, and you keep trying to push it down. I think that's what you're really seeing. I think that brings us to, that there's too much paper been sold to the amount of gold that actually exists in the world.
And it's interesting what you say you're doing is you're playing the paper market, you're short gold at the moment, but you're also accumulating physical gold. Can you explain the importance of that in your mind?
Well, there's nothing like owning a hard asset, right? I mean, when you own paper, you own the paper, it's worth the paper it's written on. Okay, when you own physical, I can touch it, I can feel it, I can smell it. I can't eat it, but I can do everything else with it, right? And paper is, if the ETF decides to reverse split, to do it, whatever they do, they have power, very much similar to like the Federal Reserve. They can manipulate around the paper asset because it's controlled versus the free market price discovery of real physical metals. Hard assets have great value when you own them. When you try to represent them through derivatives, you are always subject to something going wrong at some point.
And a question that we get often is the allocation of gold versus silver. A lot of people are more bullish on silver. Your perspective on that?
No, I like silver. Look, I like them both. I mean, Does silver have a bigger chance for a much bigger return over time? Probably. I mean, look, it's a $20 asset versus a $1,800 asset. So, could the gold go to 2,500 and silver go to 40? Yeah. Okay. So, and I think if you ever get back to the gold silver ratio, I think that would bring it in. But, I'm bullish both, right? And I'm really bullish platinum as well. But I think that, if you look for to buy tonnage, people like to buy tonnage. They want to buy a lot. Well, how much gold can you buy at 1,800 versus how much silver you can buy at 20? So I think that silver is very bullish, and it does have other uses other than just, as a potential currency. But, that's what, a lot of people are saying, but, gold is still a staple, as is silver. And right now the ratio is pretty wide. I think it was about 90 to 1 right now. And we'll see. But again, I'm a believer in both, but I can certainly see people saying that they think silver is going a lot higher. But remember, they've tried to squeeze it in the past too, and that has failed as well. So we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, last thoughts on the markets going from here. I know recently you've been saying it's kind of an interesting market. We're seeing a lot of sell-off in the stock market. We're seeing a bounce here today in precious metals, but there's low volume in a lot of these trades. Your perspective on the low volume we're seeing in the market right now and what you're expecting going forward?
The low volume is a concern, and it's basically from every market, whether it be equities to gold to grains. Every market we know has very light volume right now. So you're seeing a lot of artificial moves. I think that you're going to see volume continue to decline. I personally believe that this is more of a retail type push, and I think that what's happening is the commercials and the big funds are trying to let the retail buyers buy them so they can sell them to them and then tank them down hard. And now, again, I don't think they like what's going on here, so I wouldn't be surprised to see, not today, but at some point next couple of days, probably a rally, because they want to keep the excitement going, because I think they really want to sell. I think the picture is very ugly for the near future. And, obviously we've got the election coming up, midterms, but overall, we could see a real meltdown and a real disaster, which would mimic, 08, 01, go back to 87. Any one of those, we could see some devastation here. And I think a lot of poor people are going to be stuck in the middle of the meat grinder before it's all done.
So really what you think is happening right now is the big money is trying to get out of the stock market.
I think they're trying to get short the market. Not only trying to get out, I think they're trying to sell it. And I think that they're kind of sitting back, and we just had a nice big rally until the last couple of days, and we came all the way back off the bottoms, and we're spiking higher, and the trends were changing, and people were kind of jumping in, and then all of a sudden, bang, here we are once again struggling. But I think that's what you're seeing, and I think that they don't want to push the button to sell right now, because I think they know that the market will collapse because of the light volume. So I think that's what you're watching right now. But overall, it's a very bleak picture for the markets at this point. Again, I believe in them long term, but over the next 6 to 20 months, we could be in real trouble.